is 10 a.m. September 15th, and this meeting of the Arizona Oil and Gas Conservation Commission is called to order. Establish a quorum. Commissioners, would you announce yourselves?
Bill Feyerabend here.
Dale Nation's on here.
Mike Conway.
Stephen Cooper.
Frank Thorwald. We have a quorum. Moving on to agenda item 2. Administrator Schmidt, would you care to go through it, please?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Commissioners, thank you for being here this morning. Yes, approved permit well information. You can see on our agenda that there was 5 permits that have been approved, ranging from permit numbers 1290 to 1294.
Could you administration? Oh, there you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. There you go. And so, yeah, 1290 to 1294. These are all Pinta Dome operating wells on state leases. The commissioners have been provided, as well as part of our notice to the public, with a table, attachment A, that shows the details of those wells per their applications. We've had all of the information provided, and it's been approved. And so what I would like to request for the commission is to take a vote and affirm the approval of these 5 permits, unless there's any questions from the commissioners at all on any specific one or a couple or whatever.
Can we do them all with one motion?
Chairman Thorwald?
I don't see why not.
Yeah, I would say that would be fine.
Any questions on any of them before we proceed? Do I hear a motion?
I move that we approve the Pinta Dome operating wells 1290, 1291, 1292, 1293, and 1294. Approve the permitting of them.
Any discussion? Do I hear a second?
Bill, second.
We have a second from Commissioner Firebrand. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, it's approved.
Okay. Thank you, commissioners. So I guess moving on to item B in the agenda, pending permits. We only have 1 right now. Well, I shouldn't say that. I have a couple of more that we just recently received in the last week, but Pinta Dome Operating has 1 that's under review, and they are waiting to gain some access to the property. So they have pushed off submitting their GFOP approval, and we're waiting on that as well, I think, on that permit. But we do have a lot of the information, and we're doing a more substantive review on that one. I did just get in some other permit applications and did a quick cursory review on them so far. Desert Eagle operating, which they will be speaking to on the spacing exception this morning, further down in our agenda. But then also just received 1 in the last couple of days or so from Arizona Energy Partners, limited liability company. And so I'm going through that one as well. So we'll keep you informed as to how those progress, but we're just getting started on some of those. And once you review and vote on the spacing exceptions for Desert Eagle, I do have their information. It looks all so far so good. So we will do a more substantive review once you vote on their spacing exceptions today, and get with them on anything else we might need. Any questions on that so far? And I'll move on to the next item.
I was,
So,
I was a little confused on that. Now,
Yeah.
we were on B and we were talking about other items besides the.
yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I wanted to let you know that we just recently received a new permit application when this notice was posted. And so I just wanted to kind of let the commission know that we are have a couple of other permit applications in the door. One is from Arizona Energy Partners, and the other one is the Desert Eagle permits for the spacing exceptions that they'll be speaking to today. So Pinta Dome is the only one right now that we have had in process. So we've kind of moved along the process and that we have active right now, but we will be reviewing the others too. So I apologize for any confusion.
Then no action is needed on B.
No action right now. Just keeping the commissioners informed of kind of what's going on in our permitting world right now.
Okay.
So moving on to item C, drilling activity since the last meeting. Myriad Resources has contacted us, made notification, submitted all of the information for plug and abandonment of 2 wells. And I believe those wells have been plugged. So they were permit numbers 1275 and 1265. And I know I did see Brittany Roth on the call this morning. So if the commissioners have any questions about those, I think she can probably respond to those, but I don't see any issues with them. And they've moved along to plugging those wells.
Have we confirmed that those wells were plugged?
We have Brittany. We have had notification that they have been plugged in early August. So I think Brittany, you've submitted everything, right?
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
So we have submitted the paperwork to P&A, both subject wells and our procedures to Chris.
Right.
We have plugged the Rattlesnake 121 and the Aztec 3-1 is next. So we'll be communicating move-in rig up for that in the coming weeks.
Right.
So only the Rattlesnake has been plugged at this point.
Yeah,
Right.
and I was bombarding Chris with a lot of information. So I think, he got all the procedures and that, but yeah, we'll be moving on to the Aztec next.
Yeah. So that's, we wanted to keep you apprised of the activity. And so I know about the 121, Rattlesnake 121. And then I have been in contact with Myriad and Brittany on the other one as well. So, yeah.
And Administrator Schmidt, did that meet all our requirements for the plugging?
Yes, yes, they did. The way where they were setting plugs, or the process in which they were going to plug it, is in accordance with rule. And the way they were going to finish off the monuments after they did plug the wells was also in accordance with rules. So I feel like Rattlesnake 121 does meet rule, and I'm sure Aztec 3-1 will meet rule.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioners, do you have any questions on that?
Yeah, this is Mike Conway. Chris,
Hi, Mike.
does somebody from your team go out and examine the plugged well to make sure that it is indeed plugged properly?
We haven't done them in the past, and we did not inspect the Myriad Rattlesnake. But when we get notice, probably on Aztec 3-1, we'll go out there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
And this is Brittany Roth with Myriad. I would just chime in and add that Administrator Schmidt has asked that we provide photos of the surface marker once everything's in place as part of our post-plugging submittal. So we'll be submitting that here promptly, just showing what surface looks like after that.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you.
Yep. So if there's no other questions, we'll move on to II under item C, and that's Pinta Dome permit number 1278 extension request. Commissioners, this well, API number 02017-20141. The well ID is Pinta Dome operating 36-1 state. This permit was approved in February of 2023, and it has since expired on August 5th of 2023. However, the operator has contacted us about a week or so after the permit expired, and that they are trying to gain access to the lease. It appears that the property surrounding the lease, they still have to work with the owner to get access across their property to get to their lease. So in the meantime, the permit has expired, but they did request an extension to the permit. So I'm coming before the commission to get some guidance from the commission on one of two approaches that we can take with this permit extension request. One is the commission per rule 12.7-104 Part D says that if a well has not been operating or drilled within the first 180 days, the permit will become null and void unless there is an extension provided in written format to the operator from the commission approving the extension. That's one route that I'm stating that we could go here, or that we would have the operator just submit a new permit request. And so it would be another $25 fee plus a new application to get a new permit. So I'm requesting of the commission to determine which route to discuss and vote on which route they would like to go. And then we will, based on what your discussion and your ultimate vote would be on this, we will accordingly follow that and either send them a letter that their permit has been extended, or they will have to reapply. However, rule is not really clear about how long an extension can be, how long an extension can last and how many times that an extension can be requested. So I would leave it to the commission to determine what they would believe would be the appropriate time frame. As a suggestion, I would think permits are typically good and active for a period of 6 months. So I would assume that if the commission decided that that was a fair amount of time, that a 6-month extension could be granted. But I will leave it to the commission to determine what kind of a time frame they wish to extend on the permit. If you decide that they need to reapply, then there is no question about that. They would just have to reapply, and they would have 6 months again to drill that well.
Administrator Schmidt, Chairman Thorwald,
Yes.
a couple questions from my side.
Sure.
What do we have with regard to our rules? If it's first of all, how long is it this has expired? When did
It expired, Chairman, on August 5th. So it's been expired for a month, maybe a month, a couple weeks. Yeah.
when did they get their paperwork into us?
They have not reapplied. I'm sorry. An email was sent, a written notification by email was sent on August 13th.
So it was sent after it expired?
Yes, it was the request came in after the permit had expired. We were actually in the process of getting ready to notify the operator to notify Pinto Dome that their permit was going to expire. And we wanted to understand what was going on with the well, but they preempted that with the email saying that they would like to request an extension for it. And I did notify them that we would bring it up before the commission on this meeting for approval or disapproval, during our meeting today.
Are we doing anything to let people know prior to the expiration that something is about to expire?
Yes, we are. We are tracking that more closely. And so as permits are getting approved, we are tagging them for notification prior to expiration. So within 30 days of expiration, we're trying to send out notices to them now going forward. I'm not really sure, since I was an administrator. I've only been administrator for the last 3 months. I'm not sure how much of that was being done on the prior, but we are making some very intentional efforts to make sure that the operators are aware permits are about to expire, and we need to understand what's going on with the wells.
This is Commissioner Nations.
Yes.
Is there any jeopardy for the operator to not have this extension? Is, in other words, could they lose that lease possibility?
I don't think so. I think it's more or less just whether they can drill the well or not. I don't think the lease is in question. As far as I know, the problem is that they are trying to gain access to the lease and they have to cross over properties that are surrounding the lease. And I think it's one landowner that owns all of the properties surrounding that lease. And so I think it's gaining access, like either building a road or scraping a road to get access to the spot where they want to drill. And so it's not, I don't think it's the lease in question. I think it's just getting the approval from and working out a deal with the adjacent property owner to gain access to that lease.
It seems to me as if this is too indefinite about granting a lease extension with all of those uncertainties out there. So I think I would request, or I would suggest that we just let the lease expire and ask them to submit a new permit application whenever they're ready.
Hey, Chris and Dale, this is Joe Dixon from the State Landing Department. I can fill in a little information for you on this.
Sure.
Lease in question is number 13-120889.
Right.
It would expire its first 5-year term in June 5th next year. So they're good for us. And we also have
Yeah.
a geological field operation plan approved for them that goes to the lease extension date. But yeah, the
Right.
big issue has been this, all the surrounding area is part of the Fitzgerald Trust up there. And they have a pending sale right now, which I think was supposed to expire, like today or something like that. I know it was like mid-September, but they weren't real anxious to let anybody kind of cross their land until something happened with that purchase option there. So I don't know if that's gone through or not. We've had several conversations with the Fitzgerald folks there too, because apparently there's no real requirement in the state of Arizona that, you have to provide access to anybody across your land for anything. So that's always been kind of an issue there. So I don't know if that'll get resolved here or not, depending on what happens with this pending sale that they had. But yeah, as far as the land department's concerned, they're pretty good to go. Even next year when that lease expires, they can get another 5-year automatic extension to, keep going if they want to or need to.
Right. Yeah, thanks.
Mhm.
Thanks, Joe.
Mr. Dixon, Chairman Thorwald, if we have them reapply, is that going to affect the existing lease?
Not really. I mean, they wouldn't be able to drill without, your permission on it there too. But, kind of be up to them now if they would just want to keep the lease going or let it go. It's going to be a financial decision for them to make.
Thank you.
Joe, I had a question. If we do reissue, have them reapply, would they have to submit a new GFOP and get it approved, or would you use the existing one?
No, we just use the existing one.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Mhm.
Any other discussion, commissioners? Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Cooper. I would move to deny Pinadome's permit number 1278 extension request for the following reasons: that the permit had expired, the request for the extension occurred after the expiration, and the record before the commission was that they were notified by the administrator or a designee of the impending expiration of the permit.
Commissioner Cooper, I don't think we notified them of the expiration of the permit.
I thought I heard
Yes.
you did.
Yes, Commissioner Cooper. Yes, we were in the process of going to notify them, and then they had sent in this request. Yes.
Then with the chairman's permission, I would move to amend my motion to deny the extension request for the reason that it had expired and the request to extend occurred after the expiration.
We hear a second.
This is Commissioner Nations. I second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, the request is denied.
Okay, commissioners, we will just notify Pintadome that they will need to reapply based on the decision of the commission and for the reasoning and the rationale that was provided by Commissioner Cooper. Thank you. Commissioners, next item on the agenda is item D, spacing exception requests. You have been provided with an updated agenda, and I apologize to those on the call who did not get it just yet in the public, but I do want to clarify that there was an incorrect listing of the company that is requesting the spacing exception request. It was inadvertently written as or communicated as Pinta South, but it's actually Desert Eagle Operating. And the well designations, the two well designations for which they are requesting spacing exceptions are the same. They are the same. It's just the company was inadvertently identified as Pinta South, but it's actually Desert Eagle Operating. So we did correct your agenda. However, due to time constraints, we weren't able to repost it, but I am bringing that out in the record now during this meeting that we have corrected that, and we will have the appropriate agenda when it's posted to the website, identifying Desert Eagle as the company who is requesting the exceptions, and also will be responsible for drilling the wells under the permits once they're approved. We have received their permit applications, have done a cursory review of them. I think all of administratively they're close to being in order. And so once the commission votes on the spacing exceptions, we can go through a more substantive review of the permits and get with Desert Eagle on any clarifications or other information that we need, and get those permits up on the board for approval next go round. So I do believe we have Deidre O'Callahan in here this morning on the call. She is going to go over the request for the spacing exceptions for you. Good morning, Deidre.
Good morning, Chris. Good morning, commissioners. I actually also have Kurt Constenius standing by to go through the geological parts of this recommendation or this request. I'm just going to walk through the beginning of it and let you guys know what we're trying to put together out here. My name is Deidre O'Callahan. I'm a landman. I work for Brad Butler, who is a driller, has drilled, as it says here on the presentation, 26 wells in the Holbrook Basin since 2018 on his own account, and also for Ranger in partnership with Myriad and as a partner in Pinta South Operating for the Pinta South project to the south of this. Brad is in Colorado this week drilling a well, and he may or may not be on this call. I don't know if he was able to get on. But in any case, what we're talking about today is what we call the Drifter prospect. It is a Coconino prospect that is based upon a well that was drilled by High Plains Petroleum, the 113 Santa Fe in section 21, township 21 North, 27 East. That well was drilled and then plugged and abandoned in 1983. We're today requesting two spacing exceptions. The first one is a request for a setback exception, and the second one is for spacing to 80 acres instead of 640 acres for a gas well. The next slide you can go to, Chris, or
Okay.
whoever's pushing the buttons.
Okay.
The first request is in connection with the setback. The Arizona rules provide for a 1,660-foot setback from section lines for any gas well drilled in Arizona without exception. We are requesting a setback exception so that we can drill, basically either re-enter or drill directly adjacent to the High Plains well. The rationale for that is that when this well was drilled back in the 80s, it identified what we believe is a helium opportunity in the Coconino. It is identified as inert gas. Kurt will go into that a little bit more. The well is located 336 feet from the south line and 988 feet from the west line of section 13 and 2127. You can go to the next slide, please. The second request has to do with down spacing from 640 acres to our recommended 80-acre spacing. The rules in Arizona, as I said, do provide that only one well can be drilled only one gas well can be drilled in a section without an exception. Kurt will go over the rationale for this, but in essence, what we found in historical wells in the nearby areas in Pinadome and other areas is that there can be a tendency for water to come to cone into the wellbore because it's such a low pressure reservoir. And so the idea is you would drill more wells in a section and not draw on them as hard so that you can actually produce the helium without having a problem with water. The second well that we're looking at drilling in this section 13 is located at a legal location, 1,982 feet from the south line and 1,739 from the west line of section 13. But as I said, we're asking for 80-acre spacing in lieu of 640-acre spacing. Go to the next slide. This is a screenshot from the well file for the High Plains. It's actually the 113 well, but we call it the High Plains 842 because that's the permit number. This is back to the first request. We are asking for a setback that's closer than 660 feet from the section line because we do want to either re-enter or directly twin or offset this well. Just because that's the place where we have the most information and we feel like it's the right thing to do is to utilize the historical information that we have. The High Plains permit and drilling, well file includes this plat that shows an 80-acre drilling and probation unit. We did not find any other documentation where they provided any request for a spacing exception. And frankly, I don't know if the spacing was the same in 1983 as it is now. So I just want to sort of throw it out there that this well was drilled on an 80-acre spacing back in 1983. Or actually, I think it was drilled in 82. You can go to the next slide. We have two proposed locations in section 13. This is a plat that shows the southwest quarter of section 13. The first well that we plan to drill is the Desert Eagle operating 13-4, which is the one in the southwest quarter of section 13. It is an existing pad basically and existing well that we would either twin or re-enter. And the second well, so there's, as you can see, there's a stand-up 80-acre tract, which would include the west half of the southwest quarter for that well. The second well is the Desert Eagle operating 13-6, which is located in the northeast of the southwest of section 13. And so the spacing unit for it would be a stand-up 80, which would be the east half of the southwest quarter of section 13. You can go to the next slide. This slide shows where our leases are. We've taken a farm in from Coterra. Coterra has a lease from the railroad that is quite a few years old, covers about 400,000 acres. We've taken a farm in that will give us the right to earn up to 5 sections, as you can see outlined here in yellow. We're planning on drilling in section 13 to begin with. We're hoping that the structure is big enough to do some additional drilling elsewhere, but we really just don't have any information about that. We gave notice regarding these spacing exceptions to the BLM. The BLM, as you can see outlined in red, owns the offsets in sections 14 and 24, and 12, 14, and 24 in 21, 27, and also section 18 in 21, 28. We also gave notice to the Navajo Mineral Department regarding section 7 in Township 21 North, 28 East, which is also outlined in red. You can see there where it's labeled Navajo Minerals. We gave notice to each of these parties that we intended to apply for these spacing exceptions. We delivered the notice by certified mail, and I gave a copy of that, or scanned a copy of that to Chris for your files. Yeah. So any questions about that? Nope. Next slide then. This is a fairly, it's actually fairly easily accessible location. It's located not very far off of Highway 191. There are no residences. There's no occupied buildings anywhere close by. There is an abandoned building. If you were going from where we took this picture, it would be behind me. But in any case, it's very nice, accessible location. And as you can see in there, there's a power line, so that if we are successful, hopefully we'll have access to power for any kind of a processing plant that might need to be built in the area. You can go to the next slide. We're currently finalizing surface access here. Chris and I have talked about this a little bit. Basically, we're acquiring some tracks to drill both of these wells. The first one is on this slide, is the reentry or twin for the High Plains well. As you can see, it's got a little white box there that says High Plains. We would access that via, this is a shot from Google Earth. So you can see that there are some faint roads in the area. It is fairly accessible, and we intend to use whatever roads are there to avoid any additional disturbance. You can go to the next slide. This shows both of the locations. You can see some faint lines where there are some roads which were established many years ago, which we will utilize to get to these locations. And you can see that the setback the footage locations in regard to both wells are shown on the top of the slide. I think with that, I get to turn it over to Kurt, unless you guys have any questions about what we've done so far. Kurt, are you there?
Yes.
Excellent.
So, Chris, you can go to the next slide, please.
Why don't you introduce yourself real quick, Kurt?
So, my name is Kurt Constanius. I'm a geologist. I've met with the commission in the past, representing Ranger operating. I've worked for several entities out there as a geologist and geophysicist. And today I'm going to show you information from the High Plains well, the legacy well that was drilled in 1982 and 83, and how we've used that well to identify a reentry or twinning candidate for this well in the Drifter prospect. So from the, and I'll show you data that's both from the public domain well records and then also the data that we were able to acquire from independent sources. So the, in terms of legacy well results,
Kurt, excuse me a moment, Chairman Thorwald, I just wanted to remind you that anything that is proprietary to you will be publicly available. So
yes, we understand.
Okay, thank you.
Our, I guess, motivation to pursue the drilling activities here is based on this log here from the High Plains well. It's called a neutron density log. It's normally used to give you an idea of the porosity characteristics of any reservoir that's encountered in a well. And you'll see on the right side, it's labeled neutron density. I have a red line showing Coconino sandstone at 902 feet. That's the drilling depth. And then a blue line at about 950 feet. So the red line's the top of the formation. We believe the gas zone is 50 feet thick based on what's called crossover. If you, you'll see that at the top of the log, the dashed line, and Chris, I don't know if you can point to these, or you can let me screen share and I can point. Anyway,
where are you going?
Can you share? Are you allowed to share?
Yeah, you can share it real quick. Yeah, if you got it up. Yeah.
Okay, you'll have to give me permission.
Brooke, can you give Kurt permission? And then we'll take it back when he's ready.
Yes. Okay, so I'm gonna have to bring up the proposal. See here. I'll get on the correct slide.
Kurt, are you trying to make everybody jealous because you're outside in Montana? It's nice and cool and you got a jacket on?
Yes. Yeah, it was in the 40s here this morning. Okay. I just had to make a Few adjustments. Okay, can you see my screen showing the presentation?
Yeah,
Yes,
Okay, so the and you can see my cursor?
yes,
Okay, so on the neutron density log on the right, the neutron log is shown as the dash curve here, and the density log is this curve here. And when the neutron log deviates to the right here, it's caused by gas in the formation that's creating that effect. It's called crossover. I'll show you a petrophysical log in the next file. So that, and you can see it to various degrees, it occurs kind of lower in the section, but certainly it's heightened in this upper 50 feet. And in addition, in the lower right corner here, this is from the well file for the well. At the end of August 15th, they drilled to 1,000 feet, and they noted that they were, this is actually incorrect, they were high to the Gunston well, they're about 5 feet high. But this is what's important here. Small gas kicks, good show, top 50 feet at Coconino sandstone. So we have 2 bits of evidence here suggesting that there's inert gas. They say helium, but there's really no, we don't have any gas analysis, so we don't know the nature of this gas. But nevertheless, the well logs are giving us an expression that there's some sort of gas that's filling the top of the Coconino sandstone. And then at about 950 feet and below, the curves are much closer together, and this is probably water wet. And I'll show you another log that confirms that. So that was an intrigue for the well. They then ran a petrophysical log, and same thing here in the what they call the porosity, fluids, and bulk volume column here, shaded in black. They're showing that the porosity log showing that there's about 12 to maybe 20% porosity in the Coconino sandstone, the left side of the curve where I'm drawing my cursor. And then the part shaded in here is the amount of crossover. And it's a large amount of crossover here, which is consistent with there being gas in the upper 50 feet of the Coconino sandstone. Now this column here to the left, it says water. They've done a calculation here, and they're showing here that the water saturation in the Coconino sandstone, I put a red arrow here, is a little above 40% down to 20%, maybe even a little bit less in here. So this is within the realm of what you'd expect for a gas reservoir in the Coconino. And now when you get to below the blue line here, the water saturations are 80% and above. And this would be consistent with this being a mostly wet zone here. And that's what's expected for the Coconino sandstone. And I'll show you an example from Pinadome. So that just north of Chambers is where the Drifter prospect area is. And then if we go about 12 miles to the southwest is Pinadome. I-40's through here. And then the Porco River running through here. So at Pinadome is here, Navajo Springs here. I'll show you 3 slides eventually in the presentation. I'm going to show you an example of coning from the Ranger 2-1 well here at the Mustang Dome area. It's kind of a subsidiary part of Pinadome. And then there's legacy core data to show you the rock properties of the Coconino sandstone from 2 wells that were drilled and cored back in the 60s. So first, let's just look at a log correlation, looking at 2 wells here, the High Plains well, then just a very short distance south of it was a well drilled in 1982 called the Gunston well. And then we'll look at a kind of typical well with good logs from Pinadome. So here's the 3 wells I mentioned. The High Plains Petroleum well here, which has been the focus of our discussion. This Gunston federal well shown here, just for correlation. And then there's on the right side here is a well from Pinadome, the KM, what we call the KM 36. That was permit 36. And let's just look briefly at that Pinodome here. Now these logs are a little bit different log. It's called a resistivity log. And the resistivity log here here's the Coconino sandstone here. And the resistivity is quite low. It's a little bit higher here in the gas zone at Pinodome in the Coconino. And then it slowly tapers off and then it gets very low again. The Coconino sandstone typically in this area is highly saline, and which means it's very conductive. And so it's shown as low resistivity. Where the gas has displaced that water and you have just rock and gas in the reservoir, it becomes much higher resistivity. So if we look here at the High Plains well here, the resistivity log, again here in the Moan Copies, fairly low. And then it's been highlighted in red here. It becomes extremely high. This is a log scale. So the resistivity exceeds 2,000 ohm meters here. And then it scales way back down to maybe 10 or 20 ohm meters when we get into the saltwater leg of the Coconino sandstone. So the analog here is pretty similar. At Pinodome, there was maybe originally a 100-foot gas column here. And it looks like we're going to potentially see a 50-foot gas column here in the High Plains well. So what is coning? So in our kind of two-part recommendation here, the plan would be to drill the and either twin or re-enter the High Plains petroleum well. That well, which I just reviewed, has the least risk in terms of you're right at the well location, so you should encounter exactly what was encountered 40 years ago. The motivation for if that well is successful, in other words, if we do test helium there, and I should emphasize, I've used the term inert gas. We don't know the composition of the gas. But if there is helium there and there's sufficient pressures and other factors, and that well is overall considered successful, then we would drill a second well in the adjacent 80-acre section. And the reason for that is if the project's successful, there would obviously be a plant constructed to purify so we just get helium, much like Ranger's done at their facility, and then we would reject the nitrogen. So they call it a nitrogen rejection unit. And typically those plants operate at about a capacity of 2 million cubic feet of gas a day. So there would be a temptation to flow the wells at the highest rate possible just to create the best economic conditions for the plant. And what we'd like to do is have two wells instead of one well bore. In other words, two well bores act as one effectively to feed the plant, at least initially, so that we keep the flow rates low. And the reason for that is we're concerned about what's called hydrologic coning. And the Coconino sandstone in the Holbrook Basin, Arizona, is particularly susceptible to this. And the reasons it's susceptible is that we have a very, very low pressure reservoir, and we have a very highly permeable, the Coconino sandstone is a world-class reservoir. It's very porous and it's very permeable. Plus it has noted in core vertical fractures. And those are all elements collectively that make a well susceptible to coning. And myself and Andrew Payton and former drilling engineer, we were quite concerned about this in this Ranger 2-1 well when it was drilled. And in this well, admittedly, the water, we knew the water was quite close. There's a very thin gas cap. So we knew the water was quite close to where we had penetrated just the upper part of the Coconino. So we thought care needed to be taken in producing the well. And what this is, in the diagram on the right here, we show the top of the Coconino sandstone here. The gas part, filled part of it is shown in this kind of pink color. And then we show a well bore that's been drilled in and is perforating near the top. So it's flowing gas through here. Well, if you pull on this reservoir too hard, in other words, if it's flowed at a maximum rate, and or if you add compression to even increase that rate, which is a temptation, because you're trying to get as much gas in the plant as possible, you can actually cause the water to cone. You're basically pulling up, it's like sucking too hard on a straw. And the water comes in, and once the water arrives, the performance of the well dies. And that's shown here on this graph where it's comparing daily flow rate in 1,000 cubic feet of gas per day. And then this on the horizontal axis here is days since initial production. So you can see here in the first 30 days, the well was producing at quite a high rate, between 600 and 700 MCF per day. And then you'll see here at about day 40, this is when the water arrived. The water arrives and suddenly the gas cut goes completely down. You fall off a cliff here. And eventually by day 60, 65, you're essentially, the well is done. So that there's still gas in the top of the structure, but you've pulled so hard and brought water in the immediate vicinity of the well that you'll have a very difficult time ever recovering that gas. It's pretty much over. What would be required then is to drill a new well and then try and access that gas. So anyway, so the motivation behind our recommendation is to drill 2 wells reasonably spaced apart to act as one wellbore, at least initially, to feed the plant. Now, other aspects of production of the Coconino at Pinodome is this is a map from Allen, 1978. The Pinodome field had been shuttered around 1976, and in a guidebook, Allen summarized many of the aspects of the Pinodome field. This is a structure contour map showing the high part of the structure here at 447.90 feet. And then it shows the going down structure to the north and northeast. There's a fault here that separates that we just talked about a well probably drilled right about here at Pinodome, or excuse me, Mustang Dome here. But you'll notice that the wells are quite close together. This is a bit of a comment about the legacy of how wells were spaced in terms of production of the Coconino. Kerr-McGee had a pipeline. This line here is the pipeline that's going through here, and it caused them to focus all their wells in the immediate vicinity of the pipeline, with the exception of a couple to the north and south. But you'll see that this is a mile square here. You'll see that the wells are on roughly perhaps a quarter mile spacing at the crest, maybe approaching a half mile spacing here, maybe a little over a half mile spacing here. So just a comment about that, they ended up pursuing maybe something similar to what we're proposing there. Now, how did they produce their wells? So this is and I should point out which wells these are. The 172 well was drilled here. This was the discovery well in the field. And this well here is the KM36 well. Both are very highly productive wells. I should add that when this well was later twinned by Ranger, the well was wet, even though we thought it would have some remaining production in it. So here's on this axis here, again, is flow rate. And then a horizontal axis is the dates. So this is starting in 1961. And then the field was pretty much done producing by 1976 here on the right side. So the 172 well had an average production of 380 MCF per day. And you'll see in terms of its rates, it was kind of throttled back here, and then starting around in the late 60s, around 1968, they produced it at a pretty high rate, 900 to almost 1 million a day. And then this is an artificial, this is sales contracts were largely terminated. So that's the reason this, it's not like the example I showed of coning. So this well was pretty much just shut in and stopped producing. But we were a little surprised when we offset it was wet, because we would have expected there would have been some remaining potential there. But this is just speculation, but it could be that when they produced at high rates, they initiated perhaps some coning in that area. That's again a speculation. The well, the KM36 well, it produced its maximum rates were closer to 700 MCF per day, and it was producing an average of 300 MCF per day. And again, this is in the perspective of the plant. Would probably need to be fed, in the order of 1 million to 2 million cubic feet of gas a day. So I mentioned some of the elements of coning are, one is the low pressure, and that was related to us by a reservoir engineer that was a consultant for Ranger. The other that's more highly noted is the high permeability, fractures, and high porosity. So we see those here, particularly permeability and the vertical fracturing. This is a coconino sandstone core. It's from Navajo Springs Field, and it's at the Eastern Santa Fe. We call it Permit 194. This well has produced more helium than any other gas well in Arizona. And so this high permeability, any value, over maybe 20 or 30 would be very high permeability. And here you can see they're 700, 200, 400. Everything is extremely high permeability in this well for the upper 40 feet that they analyzed. Now, intriguingly, one of the things they noticed here is they document some vertical fractures, and the vertical fractures can cause communication through the rock, and that would help facilitate any coning if you were to produce the well at too high a rate. Similarly here, permeability in this column here, really high values in the 382, 210, 247, really high values. It's a little tighter streak there, and then high values through here. So it's a very high permeability reservoir. And again, at the very top, the top 10 feet, they're noticing that a number of vertical fractures through here. So just some data that supports our contention that the coconino can be subject to coning, and we provided the one example from the Mustang Dome area. So in summary, Desert Eagle seeking to spacing exceptions to drill 2 wells, the DEO 13-4 fee that would be drilled first, and if successful, then we would drill the DEO 13-6 to both would test and produce the drifter prospect. The DEO 13-4, we request a setback exception to re-enter or twin the High Plains Petroleum well. And then the 13-6 well, we're requesting downspacing to 80 acres. To support that recommendation, based on modern historic production data at Pinadome and Navajo Springs, we believe the coconino sandstone is prone to hydrologic coning due to the factors I mentioned, which are high permeability, low reservoir pressure, and vertical fracturing. And then lastly, we think extreme care must be taken when producing these wells in order to reduce the risk of that coning. And that would be by throttling them back, the production of the wells. So if there's any questions, I think Deidre and I are happy to address them.
Commissioners, do you have?
I'll stop sharing.
Okay, Brooke, can you pick back up?
Kurt, this is Mike Conway. On the first gas flow diagram you showed, before the gas well really dropped off, there were a number of areas where it declined very rapidly and then came back up again. Do you have any idea why that was?
They probably either shut off the wells for either maintenance or other reasons. And those could include, like, if they had any condensation or moisture in a line, or it could have been other mechanical issues. But I think any sort of sudden drops would be due to more of the logistics of operating the well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
This is Commissioner Nations. Kurt, do you have a structure, the structure worked out on this particular?
No, so that's a great question, Dale. So in terms of as a geoscientist, I always think about risk of the wells, and the reason that I recommend that we twin or re-enter the well is that we have no structural information at all about the area. And so I've made a recommendation to the team that we acquire a dip meter log in the wells that we drill to help give us some idea of the nature of the structure.
Well, if there are no more questions from the commissioners, I'd like to move that we grant the requested spacing exception for the DEO 13-4 and DEO 13-6 as requested.
Is there a second?
This is Mike Conway. I second that.
Any further discussion before we vote? Hearing none, if you're in favor of it, say aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, it's granted.
Okay, I made that note, commissioners. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Deidre and Kurt.
Commissioner Nations, this is a question for Chris. Not a question, but comment. I really appreciate the quality of that presentation. And I've seen Kurt do this before.
Yeah.
So, I'd like to endorse that.
Yeah, I knew when I saw their presentation, Dale, you would be happy. So I was looking forward to seeing them this morning. So yes, but thank you, Deidre. Thank you, Kurt, for being here, and thank you, commissioners, for voting on that. And we will move forward with reviewing their permits. If there's no other discussion on that, we will move to item E, which is discussion on permit variances and modifications. Commissioners, I just wanted to bring this up for a quick discussion. It wasn't anything that you had to vote on or anything, but I do want to just say that what we would like to do is to present to the commission, maybe next meeting, some kind of a form or some kind of a form in general on permit modifications and variances. We do get a lot of requests, and I have seen several on wells where we've approved permits before, and then the operator may decide to change to go further down in drilling, or maybe shorten, where they think they're going to go. And we know it's always the nature of exploration that, you want to test certain zones, like go deeper for the oil and gas, or you come up to the Shinneram for the helium and all of that kind of thing. But to better track those permits that we do approve for a particular depth of a well, we know that if they change location, that would have to get the commission's approval, but also changing depth. So what we wanted to do was create a form for just doing that, to just say, and it wouldn't be charging them for any of it. We would just want to, for our records, so that we can kind of better reconcile the original permit request versus any changes or modifications to it after it's been approved or anything like that. So I just wanted to open up to the commission that if you're open to that and we can do that, then we will present some kind of a form for your review and approval at the next meeting.
Any questions?
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay, then we will put something together and we will present it to the commission at the next meeting. So unless there's any other questions on that front, we will go from item E to item F, Orphan Well Grant Program updates. Commissioners, you have attachment B that we have provided to you that kind of provides several categories within the Orphan Well program and the updates that we're providing to you based on different things, such as the amount of wells in inventory, or wells that may have been plugged, or something like that, and how the Orphan Well grant program is going. So I would open it up for any questions, or if there's any particular question that any of the commissioners had on that, I'd be certainly glad to try to address those.
Commissioners, do you have any questions or any thoughts, suggestions, ideas?
Okay. And we will continue to keep the commission apprised of how things are going. We're actually moving into the next phase pretty soon, which is the actual plugging phase. So I think that's kind of an exciting thing to look forward to. So we'll keep you updated on all of those things. Moving on to item 3, this will be Chairman Thorwald's report, and I will turn it over to Chairman Thorwald, who has some topics of discussion for the commissioners. So Chairman Thorwald, you can take it away.
Commissioners, I'm responsible for adding these other items here. We would have had a shorter meeting if it wasn't for this, but for many of these items, I wanted to get your input, your advice, your guidance, discussions on the different ones. Let's start with item A, Interstate Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. The annual conference is coming up next month, and Administrator Schmidt will be going to it for the first time. I'm now on the Legal and Regulatory Affairs Committee as well as the Nominating Committee, and Administrator Schmidt will be on several of them. I worked that out. Is there any particular topics that you want to make sure that we cover, ask, or anything that you think that we should be doing in conjunction with that meeting? If you have any further thoughts on this, I would like to leave this, our next meeting of the AZOGCC will be prior to our next commission meeting. But if you have any thoughts that you think of after this, please email them to Administrator Schmidt so that we can address them when we're at that meeting. Let me move on to item B. The resolutions. The Arizona hasn't recently done any resolutions, proposed any resolutions that I can think of in my time on the committee. Commissioner Nations may know of some, but in discussions with the governor's office, they've asked if and we can't make any because the time has passed for this coming meeting. That date expires as of today. But for the future, if we have any recommendations as far as resolutions that the governor's office should submit, I would like to hear them. I'd like you to think about them and to, again, submit something to Administrator Schmidt so we can provide that guidance to the governor. Any questions or discussions on that? Okay. Moving on to item C, the Texas Railroad Commission training update. Holly had on our staff had put out questionnaires to everybody with regard to, and when I say everybody, not just to the commissioners, but the people that had attended the meetings, and to see if there was any additional training. And they came back with a number of items that they thought would like to carry on to the next level. And I wanted to see if you had any other thoughts. With that in mind, Administrator Schmidt is sending you out a link to each of the training sessions so that you can take a look and see what was provided. Sorry that it's taken this long to get that to you. And after you've reviewed those, if you see anything that you think would be important, please let Administrator Schmidt know. Holly, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Would you please let the commissioners know what the additional training is that has been asked for so far?
Will do.
Thank you.
All right, I'm searching for it right now because I put it in the email to Paul.
Sorry, I should have mentioned that to you sooner.
Okay, first subject, first topic, the process of plugging a well, obstacles to overcome, new technologies used, etc. Number 2, permitting process for UIC wells. Number 3, oil and gas inspection process that TRRC performs, such as fees, funding sources, etc. Another topic, CO2 sequestration, fees, hydrogen, helium, and monitoring. Another topic, additional information on engineering, geology, and rehab. Also, further details on well logging and types, seismic and stratigraphic surveys, well log correlation, plugging well specifics, balanced bridge plugs, engineering calculations, etc. Optimal geologic settings for storage of hydrogen, CO2, and other fluids. And that is it.
So again, if you have any additional things to add to that, the Texas Railroad Commission has been very good to us in providing these seminars on what we're doing. Let me move on to item D, 5-year review report. The 5-year review report was submitted to the governor's office, and we're waiting a response from them. I've met with them. They've come back and asked a few questions of staff. And so that is in the process. I would expect that we would have their approval. Well, first of all, the 5-year report was submitted to GERC and they approved it. But we've asked, I'm getting ahead of myself there. That was item D, and that got approved. Item E, the rulemaking process, and you've seen that attached down below as one of the attachment C. We have to get approval from the governor's office, and that has been submitted to the governor's office for approval. I've met with them on it, and they've come back to staff with questions on that. And I would suspect we would have that approval. Once we have that approval, we can move forward with the rulemaking. And as you can see, what that process is, it takes a little time, but we should be able to get it through. If you think of anything that we do not already have or changes that we need to make, please put that forward. We can take a little more time with the rulemaking process. Getting the public input is required, 30-day periods. I would like to see us move that forward as quick as possible to get the rules changed. There is issues, of course, with timing, staffing, and all of that, but we certainly have more capabilities than we did before. And I know staff is moving on that. Is there any advice or recommendations on that? Again, if you think of something, please provide that to Administrator Schmidt on what you think needs to be changed or something with regard to the process or how we should be doing things. Let me move on to item F, fee discussions. We're looking at both in rule and with legislature changing the fees. For instance, taking the $25 fee for application and changing that out of statute into a rule so we can adjust that to whatever the operational, the current rates are. Current rates by the AZOGCC now are somewhere between $400 and $700 for that. And we're looking at, I can't remember, $400 or $500 for that fee, for that particular thing. We're also looking at what other increased deposits for plugging and abandoning. And we're looking at a couple other things, trying to get some other funds from the state. For instance, a light item in a couple different areas. There's also been discussion on fees related to carbon sequestration, and potentially I've suggested following the Texas model. Administrator Schmidt, did we send out? I don't think we did a copy of what the Texas model is.
Not that I'm aware of yet, Frank.
Okay. Would you send that out to them when you have time?
Sure.
And so we're looking at all the different methods we can use to raise additional fees, but at the same time, not drive operators out of Arizona and encourage the development here in Arizona. Is there any thoughts, discussions on that, on what you think we should be doing, should not be doing, could do? Again, hearing none, please, as you think of these things, submit them to Administrator Schmidt.
Chairman, this is Commissioner Nations.
Yes.
Yeah, I think obviously an increase in the fees is necessary. It sounds like pretty large increases. And your last comment, your last statement about not driving operators out of the state is something that we need to keep in mind. Keep in mind the high risk involved in drilling wells for oil and gas and helium in Arizona, much higher risk than they have in Texas or Oklahoma. So we want to be concerned about that, to just not drive our operators away.
Thank you.
A good example is these 5 wells that we approved earlier on in the meeting. The permits, those are well locations that I have seen and looked at for many years, and wondering why operators haven't taken that kind of an approach to explore for oil and gas. So it's probably not appropriate, but I want to endorse that kind of an operation.
Thank you, Commissioner Nations. I concur with you. I do not want to drive people away. We've worked too hard to bring them in. I've seen you spend years on that. So any other thoughts on that? There was a study done on fees of what the surrounding states are charging, and then the AZOGCC provided recommendations on that, and felt that the $25, since it was close to 50 years old, 40s, let's see, what was it, 60 years old, needed to be increased to what the not the highest rates, certainly, but a more modest rate, since the higher rates are more like $700. They were thinking more in the $400 to $500 range that we should increase it to, since no state charges only $25 other than Arizona. But that was their recommendation. So which I know is a substantial increase, but since it's never been increased over the 60 years, I think it's a reasonable one. Any other thoughts on that? Underground, moving on to item G, underground injection control and primacy discussion and produced water discussion. I've been just talking with the Water Quality Division, the DEQ, and the governor's office about reinjection of produced water, and also the EPA's representative to the AZOGCC, and how we can go about doing that. And can we put together some draft guidance that would show where there would be no aquifer protection permits or other permits needed per se, special permits like the aquifer protection permit, to be able to re-inject produced water back into the ground, so that we could have some guidance for our operators out there to be able to get rid of the produced water and solve some of these problems. So I've got ongoing discussions with water quality to move that forward and to be able to create those guidelines. Is there any recommendations or suggestions with regard to the produced water discussion and alternate uses? We've been also been working with the New Mexico, continue to work with the New Mexico Produced Water Consortium, which is representing EPA on this, on fit for purpose, and how we might deal with that. Any thoughts, discussions?
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Cooper. I commend you for doing that, given what we know about the water situation in Arizona, allowing any water to basically be discharged as waste or not given its highest and best use by conserving it, by re-injecting it, I think is basically very problematic for the state of Arizona. So I do applaud you for looking into these issues, and certainly as they come, I think the commission should weigh in, but preserving water, although not part of our mantle, it is clearly something that we should be looking at.
Thank you, Commissioner Cooper. Anybody
Yeah,
else?
this is Commissioner Nations. Yes, I think there should also be some concern about capitalizing on the potential for using the produced water for lithium possibilities, or any other possibilities of capitalizing on the value of it before it's simply put back in the ground.
Yes, that's that's a very good thing to do, Commissioner Nation. We have had some discussions on that. I've also looked at something with the University of Arizona, ASU, about a potential test study to see about using that water in greenhouses, hydroponics, use of the water for generating hydrogen, and then re-injecting the hydrogen back into the used for old helium formations that have been used up, and how we might be able to do that from that produced water as an alternative to re-injecting, or as aside from that.
Good.
And those discussions are ongoing as well. One quick thing, Administrator Schritt reminded me of, that I should have mentioned on the last, on the fee discussion, on that $25 to $400 or $500 fee. All of the operators have been, it's been discussed with all of them, and none of them have any issue with us increasing that fee to that amount.
Good. That's good to hear.
Thank you, Administrator Schmidt, for reminding me of that.
Sure, no problem.
Moving on to item H, approaches to public outreach. We've been trying to reach out to the public through DEQ has done a interview, and then other approaches to reaching out to the public. We certainly, the website to find other abandoned wells in the state. Is there any recommendations that you all have or things that you think we should be doing with respect to that?
Commissioner Nations here. I think that looks good. The plan that they're following, I think, is quite adequate, and I endorse the efforts in that direction.
Thank you. Are we doing it fast enough? Do we need to do it faster? Are you happy? Are all of you happy with the speed at which we're moving forward? Hearing nothing, let me move on to item J, status of sharing data with other departments, agencies, and commissions. So far, we have not gotten very far with that. The DWR has not been overly responsive to our communications to set up a meetings to discuss that. We have not followed up with the state land department. We have talked to DEQ about it, of course, and I have had these discussions with the governor's office, and the governor's office told me that their plans are to arrange for more sharing of data between the different departments, agencies, and commissions, and think that it's a very good idea to do that. So I feel certain as we move forward that we will be getting those things in place, and that will be beneficial. As part of the Groundwater Protection Council software that we're getting, we're making sure that that will be able to be, data will be able to share it across departments and agencies and commissions to be more effective in reducing the submittal time and redundancies that are apparent. And also, of course, the associated things. We'll know who is having to pay what fees or deposits in different agencies so we don't overcharge. Is there any recommendations or suggestions in that? Okay. Again, if you think of something, please let Administrator Schmidt know so we can be more effective in this process. Moving on to item K, Navajo Hopi Indian relocation well update. Originally, I spent months with the Department of Interior and AZOGCC getting an approval for the state of Arizona to use its money from the federal funds to do the plugging of the abandoned, orphaned and abandoned wells on the Indian Road, on Navajo and Hopi Indian relocation land, near. And recently, the Department of Interior came back and said, no, we can't do it. Staff has gone back and forth, and with them, they changed their mind. AZOGCC, I got them back involved in it, and we are hopefully going to have a meeting this coming week with AZOGCC and the powers to be at the Department of Interior. Department of Interior is now saying that there is no problem in this for us to do the plugging of those wells, and but they haven't provided us any written approval of that. So we're hopefully that we will get that worked out. We have worked out with the ONER people to be able to go on the land and do the inspection and the work. We hadn't gotten any approvals from the Navajo and Hopi. Well, we didn't need it from the Hopis, but the Navajo Nation for that. But ONER was able to provide that. Any questions on that? Okay, moving on to Department of Water Resources. I think I already covered that in that they haven't been overly responsive. One of the things that I didn't mention in the others thing area is the discussion about how we deal with transferring an oil and gas well to the Department of Water Resources as a water well. And we wanted to coordinate with them on that, to have that discussion of what we should do and not do. Given the state of water here in Arizona, I recommended that, unlike the rest of the country who have, for the most part, terminated in other words, eliminated the ability to transfer an oil and gas well to a water well, that we keep that, but have a stipulation in there that if we do transfer it, that they have to have a desalinization process, that they're going to do a plant on the other end to some level, and it has to be built within a certain period of time. And if it is not built, we do not relinquish the bond until it is built. And if it isn't, then we would go ahead and require the plugging of that well after that period of time. Any guidance, thoughts on that, recommendations? Okay, again, if you have any, please let Administrator Schmidt know. Moving on to, moving on to the website. That is really just an ongoing process. Administrator Schmidt, where are we on that? I've forgotten. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yes, Chairman. On the website, as far as that, we're taking all the content and developing all the content internally. So things that we're going to put up to the website. We're kind of refraining from doing any really big updates just yet until we're ready to launch the new site. Other than maybe uploading permit stuff and some of the things that we normally do on that end. So, but we are gathering content up and the things that we need to put up on the website. And we believe the launch was supposed to be in September, but we think it's going to be pushed back just a tad, maybe October, maybe close to November. I know we're in contact with Christine internally to kind of monitor that, but we are moving forward with getting all the content ready because we want to try to get it all on at once. And then when we have the new website live, then all of that content will be available. So we have been taking suggestions. So commissioners, if you have any suggestions about content you would think you would like to see up on the site, any ideas, any things of that nature, then please feel free to write me and let me know what kinds of things you're thinking about. But yeah, we are moving forward on it, and I believe we're very close to getting the new one launched.
Thank you, and I'm glad you mentioned that. I was going to ask everybody to submit recommendations on what they thought should be on there. Any questions, discussions there?
Yeah, this is Mike Conway. Is there, at the new website, is there going to be a section or a segment on carbon sequestration in Arizona?
Let me address that. That is in a meeting earlier yesterday, in fact, on carbon sequestration, and previously with the governor's office. That is still a controversial subject. I have said it's not that controversial, and there is concern about the liability associated with the carbon sequestration and pore space. So the pore space legislation has not been submitted yet. I'm going to be having discussions with DEQ further on this, and I do have had ongoing discussions with the governor's office on carbon sequestration, and also with regard to carbon credits and how those might be used in this as well. But for the website, I don't think we're going to have anything up there on it. I think we should, though. Administrator Schmidt, have you had anything on that so far?
On carbon sequestration?
Yes.
No.
We might want to have a link on that to have that in there and discuss that.
Sure. Sure.
Again, this is Mike Conway. One thing I might suggest is that the Arizona Geological Survey has got a basin analysis team now, and they do have some information about carbon sequestration and the potential here in Arizona. So you might want to point people in that direction from your website.
Yeah, certainly. If they wanted to get some more information or something, that would be a great resource. Yeah, so we can put it up as a resource to push on a link or something to them or to that information. Sure.
And I have this Chairman Thorold, I have been working with the survey to on the carbon sequestration discussion. So I have recommended that we, as I mentioned earlier, that we follow the carbon sequestration rules set forth in Texas. I thought they were fairly stringent, and there's a number of fees that are provided in that. That's why I've asked it to be sent out to everybody. They've had no issues from operators with relationship to that structure.
This Commissioner Nations here. I want to endorse what Mike is suggesting, that we have a link to carbon sequestration projects that have already been done in Arizona. Not only the Cenozoic basins, but also on the plateau, which of course relates to the Navajo and Hopi lands. And much of the carbon sequestration potential would be up on the plateau. And that has been already covered by many activities in the past. But a link to what has been done would be a good idea.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Nations. Anybody else? Hearing none, let's move on to item N, establishment of an AZOGCC fund. What I was really trying to address here was how we get funded in the future. I mentioned that earlier, setting up our own bank accounts for that and having funds go into those. Is there any thoughts on that? I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, but for instance, the reason DEQ is handling the plugging and abandoning is because we didn't have our own separate accounts to be able to do that, our own separate funds. And anyway, any thoughts on that? Again, if you have any, please let Administrator Schmidt know. Going on to item E, status of plugging and abandoning orphan wells. Really, I think we've already covered that in Administrator Schmidt's discussions, but is there any questions? Are we moving along fast enough? Anything about how we're going about doing it? Are we any questions? Any discussion?
Yeah, this is Mike Conway again.
Please,
I
Mike.
gather that there's a group already that we've aligned with regarding the plugging of wells, and we're going to get started on that soon.
Yeah, Mike, we have 13 contractors that are working on the project, and so we are about to move into this next phase, which is the plugging of wells. They're out right now confirming all of the wells based on their record searches. So they're confirming that these wells do exist, they are there, and what status of the well, whether it's actually been plugged or it needs to be plugged. So we're kind of doing that right now and inventorying all of that. But yes, we are starting to move into the next phase, which is the plugging phase. So the scope of work for that should be released to them probably in the next couple of weeks. And then they would work with any contractors who have rigs to do the wells as they're kind of assigned to them. So we have confirmed that actually through our that we found 2 plugged wells. They're already done. So we have 2 on the board right now, but I'm sure we're going to have some more information along those lines. But yeah, we are moving into that phase.
How many wells?
Very good. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Chris, Administrator Schmidt, how many wells have we found so far that that needed to be plugged?
Well, the contractors are out there doing their due diligence on the field end of things right now. So we don't have an exact number, but right now I mean, we had a list of originally 246. That kind of came off, kind of dropped down to about 173 right now, based on things like whether they were converted to water wells or whatever. So we're kind of still kind of that target's a little bit changing, and we're going back through some files again too in an alternate task. So that number could actually increase again, but we're still working on physically inventorying exactly the wells that need to move on to plugging. So we don't have an exact number just yet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Commissioners, any more discussion or questions with regard to anything I've brought up before we go to call to the public?
Yeah, I have a quick question, Bill.
Please proceed.
The point I'm not clear on is we had talked on previous meetings about trying to make contact with like ranchers groups or land users groups, deal where we could make the request directly to those groups if they knew of any wells. And I think the comment made, yeah, that's a good idea, but I'm not clear in my mind if that went anywhere. And if it did, what's our status on that?
I could probably address that a little bit, Bill, for you. Yes, that is part of our public outreach to make contact with those types of associations, like the Cattlemen's Association or the Ranchers Association, and all of those things. So that has been on our radar. And actually, I know our staff and team has actually did some interviews with just in the last day or two here, interviews with some of those people to kind of get some ideas about that. So yeah, they are on our radar to be able to meet with, talk to, provide information to, help spread the word. So that is part of our plan, and it's gone more beyond discussion at this point. Yeah.
Okay, I'd just like to see it kind of bumped up, because to me, we're kind of moving from the point of identifying wells to doing something about it. And if we don't contact these groups to try and pull in any additional information, we will have moved beyond that point, in the general development of the program. And I would just like to push that, for that to be done as quickly as we can.
Yes, and I would agree. And we also have the contractors who have their community outreach piece, and so they are also working with us very closely to spread that word as quickly as we can get it out. Like, we have some fact sheets, we have some very pointed places we are going to go, like I mentioned before. So yeah, so that is important that we do get the word out, and that they all help us in finding some of these wells, right, on their land if they're there. Yeah.
Okay, I'll look forward to the next meeting then to kind of find out where that's gone.
Yeah, I'll put that as a kind of an agenda item or something to speak to a little bit more pointedly on the next meeting.
Have we reached out to farmers, farming groups, organizations? They use a lot of water, a lot of wells on their lands.
Yeah, that's kind of some of our plan, Chairman, is that we are contacting those kinds of groups that would own these properties, and where potentially these wells could exist. And so that is part of our plan, right? Any farmers, any ranchers, kind of cattlemen, like we said, any of these types of associations. And I know Brooke and Wendy in our team have been interviewing some of these folks to let them know about it, to kind of gather information about it, so we can really tailor our outreach to the information that they provide. What's the best way to get that information out, whether it's personally showing up or it's web or whatever it is. So yeah, we're really diving into reaching out to those groups a little more heavily.
Fantastic. I have one question for the other commissioners before we move on to the call to the public. From everything you've heard with regard to all of the items there, do you feel we're proceeding in the proper direction at the proper speed, or do you think we need to change our course any? There's a silence.
This is Mike Conway. I think, in fact, I think you guys, Chairman Thorwald, you're doing a marvelous job and pushing forward as rapidly as possible.
I'm asking everybody this because sometimes I feel like I'm off in a wilderness somewhere and need some direction to know which way to go first. Is what we're doing the right thing, the wrong thing, or too much of something? And that's why I'm asking you all for this today.
This is Commissioner Nations. I think the program that you're following is quite comprehensive, and I think that the chairman and the staff are certainly doing a good job. So I have no criticism of the way you're proceeding. I would just say let's keep doing it. And again, don't forget that there are resources in Arizona that we need to keep evaluating and develop plans to utilize them as we can. So again, I would endorse the efforts that you're doing now, and I'd like to just keep it up.
Thank you, Commissioner Nations.
Yeah, it's Bill. I think the program is really logical. So it's kind of difficult to make a comment, when somebody's laid out a program that's pretty much what, how each of us individually would approach it. Just kind of keep on.
Is there anything we're missing that we're not addressing that we should be addressing in all of this, or something we're doing too much of or too little of? I'm assuming, since I'm not hearing any answers to that one, that we're pretty much on target. So I'll just move on to the call to the public. Thank you all for your comments. And again, anything else you think of, please get them to Administrator Schmidt. Call to the public. Is there anybody in the public that would like to address the commission? Please speak up and give us your name.
Yeah, Frank, this is Joe Dixon from the State Land Department there. I was just curious if that AZOGCC fund thing had anything to do with the trying to get the commission as its own separate agency, separate from ADEQ.
No, I don't think we're going to end up being separate from ADEQ.
Okay. And I was also curious there too, if there's been any kind of response there for, Commissioner Cooper wanted to, step down there. Has there been any people trying to apply, or is the position even advertised in any way, shape, or form, or other than the people that, kind of been on the meetings here the last months or so would even know about it?
That's in the governor's hands. The boards and commissions, they've discussed that. Last I heard, they were calling around and talking to people. I've had no update since the last meeting from the governor's office.
Yeah, I've talked to a couple of people I knew there that I thought, may be interested, kind of passed it along. I don't know if anybody's really tried to apply or not there. So I know if that'd be one of those things there too. Mike Conway may know that too. Maybe put a little thing in the Arizona Geological Society newsletter. Anybody interested?
Has the governor's office contacted any of the commissioners since our last meeting?
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Cooper. They haven't, but I have spoken with them, and I believe I told you about that previously. I strongly encourage them to look at Jim Ballard. I thought he'd make an excellent addition to the commission, but I've not heard anything else from them. So that's why you're stuck with me again today.
Commissioner Cooper, I appreciate that. I do remember you mentioning it, and apart from being stuck, it will be a sad day when we lose you. You've been outstanding over all these years. Anyway, is there anybody in the public that wishes to speak?
Hey Frank, it's Marta. I actually had a question. I'm actually now with Proton Green, no longer with Desert Mountain Energy. And so we had a question. I'm not sure if you're the right person to ask this to, but you had brought up the UIC primacy stuff earlier in the meeting. I was curious if you had an update on the status of establishing primacy in the state of Arizona.
We are in the process. That's about all I can say.
Okay.
And is there anybody else that wishes to speak? Moving on to agenda item, Arizona request for future items on the agenda. Is there any requests that anybody would like to have, commissioners? Any thing that you've been not getting that you would like to get that we could have on the agenda for the next meeting? Hearing none, is there any announcements? Hearing no announcements, we'll move on to item 7, adjournment. This meeting of the Arizona Oil and Gas Conservation Commission is hereby adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.